Welcome to the Saturday Slam and Jam here on the Athletic NBA Daily. On today's show, we're talking to Sam Amick about the Thunder moving on to the finals, the Eastern Conference Finals, some off-season topics, and then we'll do some trivia. With me, as always, is my good friend Alex Speers. And also with us is a good friend, Sam Amick, who I got to spend some time with here at OKC, which was a delight. Sam, welcome to the show.
Andrew, Alex, thank you for having me. It was a delight to get to see you in person, Andrew. It's been a long time since I was in OKC. So these past couple of weeks, getting, not a little bit, but a lot of bit of time out there has been fun. I will say this, you and I hanging, 2 seats apart from each other at these games and this is your all season long life.
Yeah.
Either there or at the scorer's table, in the belly of the beast, so to speak, was a lot of fun because in today's NBA, media seating is not typically that good. Loud City is living up to its name. I think my hearing is definitely, been diminished in the past couple of weeks, but they were fun to watch and it was just a cool environment to be a part of.
Yeah, it's no joke. It is legitimately crazy loud. And like the seats that we sit in were in the corner, kind of across from the visitor bench. And we have to stand up, during portions of it. Like I don't think it's very typical to have to stand up, in a media seat, but like there are portions of the game where like Tim McMahon was sitting in front and he had to like turn around so many times because he knows that I have a bum knee and he's like, sorry about your wheel, man. And like, it's like standing up and like, then I have to stand up.
I was going to say, don't try to portray McMahon as some kind of polite gentleman.
Right.
No, he doesn't care about your knee. What are you talking about? But no, you're right. And there's like that inexact science of, Joel Lorenzi from the Oklahoman was to my left, and I could tell Joel's there all the time, and his energy was a little bit like I'll stand up whenever I want to, and I'll sit down when I want to. Yeah. I was a little more like, because I'm the outsider, like standing up and then feeling guilty and turning around to see if the people behind me stood up too. Yeah. But you're right, especially those, whether it's a big moment when everybody gets up or the beginning of the game when they don't want to sit down until somebody scores.
Yeah.
But it's a good problem to have.
So let's talk about the Thunder a little bit. What are your big takeaways from that series for OKC against the Wolves?
That as young as they are, that it's, I've certainly been convinced that it's, unless they really mess this up, this organization should be, raising a trophy this year. It should happen. And I say should in terms of talent and coaching and program and all of the above. They have, call it immature moments, and I'm just talking about play, not spirit, but like where they lose focus or they don't keep that intensity and the foot on the pedal, which I don't really blame them because nobody else in the league puts the foot on the pedal like they do. So that's the biggest thing, is that they are the best team left. But, beyond that, and I wrote about this a little bit the other day, is it's one thing to see the viral clips all season long of Thunder players goofing around with Nick Gallo or you having lighthearted interviews with different guys, or the TNT interviews where they demand that 3, 4, 5 players are part of it. Like the whole fraternity feel that was, for me, mostly an online experience to this point, to get closer to it and try to understand it a little more and see that it's very real, and then see it kind of actually have, such a positive impact on the way they play, to where, like, after game 5, Chet Holmgren was asked essentially, how are you guys able to compete at this level or something like that? And I'm paraphrasing, but you remember he said, we got 17 dogs, and all of these guys are competing all the time. Well, you can't keep that many people engaged unless you have a program where your leaders, Shea being somebody who is his normal nature, it appears, is to lift guys up and to include people. But he's not the only one. They have that culture. It seems very real. At times I'm guilty of admittedly rolling my eyes a little bit and thinking it was corny. But you can't really argue with it now. They're having a great time and they look like they should win the whole thing.
So seeing how dominant they look during that conference finals, I'm interested in your thoughts of the series against Denver in retrospect. Like, do you think that series was more about a young team just kind of needing to learn how to win? Or do you think Denver was just closer to OKC's level than a lot of people expected heading into that playoffs?
Probably, not to be political, Alex, a little bit of both. But I do think like Denver should, reevaluate its own offseason after having seen OKC, blow through this series in the way that they did against Minnesota, and feel confidence in the fact that they still have a championship core. That to me it's the inverse of what OKC was bringing to the table, where OKC certainly appears to have a championship core, but they have a championship, bench all the way through again, 15, 16, 17. The Nuggets, we all know the narrative with them, and it was the same all the way until the end, which is the depth is the issue. But when you talk about Jokic with Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, MPJ and his shoulder was an issue, obviously. So he's the guy that I think is a massive question mark right now. But Aaron Gordon in particular, having just a wonderful playoffs and huge clutch moments, like that trio of Joker, Jamal, and Aaron, they should still be excited in Denver and figure out how to add to it. Now, you've got all these other uncertainties. You got Russell Westbrook has a small player option. I'd be surprised if he was back. So they have to figure out, the depth was exposed all the way through that series, but it was impressive. The thing too, my last thought on that, Joker is so interesting because, man, it's like you could tell in that series that when he squinted hard enough and actually thought we might be able to get to the conference finals here, then you saw his superpowers rise. Then, when Gordon has the injury, MPJ has the injury, you can feel it slipping away, and it's human nature, but you can tell to me that Joker, like, he almost reads the room, and if he sees, a 10% chance, he goes for it. And if he doesn't, then he kind of fades a bit. And I did feel like that happened a little bit at the end against OKC.
You said you'd be surprised if Westbrook's back. What makes you think that?
Man, Schlecht is going straight for the aggregators.
I just piqued my curiosity.
Listen, when they fired Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, the insight and the information that came out regarding the Westbrook experience, and I know he hates this stuff. He's been getting upset with media for a minute now. And I get it because it's such a tricky, and I'm going to answer the question, but a tricky dynamic to cover because it's, I heard a rant the other day. Raja Bell at the Ringer was screaming and yelling about how are you going to make it the minimum player's fault? He was defending Russ, saying it was a pretty funny rant where he said, tell me what NFL team has media yelling at it going, it's the backup quarterback, but that's obviously a little disingenuous because Russ does have the ability to kind of, elevate or kind of devastate his own team.
Yeah.
And that has been a basketball issue and was during the season. When Malone started him for a bit, he kind of broke that, little secret that everybody knows at this stage of Russ's career, which is you can't start him because you can't unstart him after that. Mm-hmm. He's going to want that treatment, and so I guess the internal dynamics at times were tough. ESPN reported that Aaron Gordon got into it with Russ in the Clippers series in the locker room. Yeah. So that's the thing. They have to be sensitive to dynamics, and I just don't know if that. Again, it's his option, so that part comes into play. And I'm sure he's gonna, see what his market looks like and figure out what he wants to do. But it's really just a vibe. I'd be surprised if he was back.
Yeah, they just. There was all of the talk about how they want to play younger guys, but when it push came to shove in the playoffs, they had to play him a lot, and some of that's just roster issues that Denver has, and they'll have to address this offseason. But that will be an interesting the subplot here. I did want to talk about OKC a little bit more because there was just word that teams were not afraid of Oklahoma City heading into the playoffs. But league wide, how do people view the Thunder and like their run that they've had?
Yeah, I mean that word afraid, like I think they're afraid now. Like it's changed. In Game 5, for example, remember Julius Randle hits that early three.
Yep.
And then on the defensive end, he gets up into Chet in a way that showed me like Game 3 intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I have that. The Wolves won Game 3.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so I literally turned to Joel, and this is pretty hilarious in hindsight. And I was like, oh man, said OKC's going to lose tonight. and he's like, why? I'm like, because that's what wasn't there the other day. Okay, fine. They had a moment. It looked like the desperation was going to be there, and Chet looked flustered.
Yeah.
And they weren't moving the ball. And I swear, 30 seconds later, it's Naz Reid out on the break. And I honest to God cannot remember any game, any player ever. Alex Caruso just in a full sprint. And in our live blog, I said he was a heat-seeking missile. Like just running after Naz, where you talk about that word afraid, like Naz looked like he was in a horror movie. He was about to scream, like dribbles off his foot, out of bounds. That's when I was like, oh boy, like that's what the league should be afraid of. I had somebody text me when the Western Finals MVP vote came out, and I was one of the people who voted for Shea. And I still don't know if they were kidding. It was a scout for another team that literally said, because he hadn't seen the votes yet, he says, I sure hope you voted for Caruso, and like it spoke to like the depth of this team and the fact that they've got star power, they've got defensive rock stars up and down the roster, and the fear factor is in the defense. It's the intensity of Lou Dort. It's the fact that we had talked the other day about how Shea had actually seemed to dial back defensively during this series. That there was a lot of lazy getting around screens and playing off and stuff. The stuff you don't normally see from Shea, and it's like, well, he's carrying a really significant load, and he can do that a little bit on this roster. I think that speaks to fear as well. Is like, guess what? If they are so good that Shea can, coast and kind of recharge a bit at times, then that's only going to, impact things on the other end of the floor. So they're showing in the playoffs now that they are worthy of living up to the historical framing of the regular season, because 68 wins, 12.9 point differential, all these things like that speaks to dominance. And really, like on paper, this should be, the beginning of a fairly long and dominant run.
So for the Wolves, they lose in 5, but they did make back-to-back conference finals after having made the conference finals only once in the previous 34 years. They're heading into the summer with big decisions to be made about several key pieces, including Naz Reid. Naz won Sixth Man of the Year last year, and he has said that he sees himself as a starter. But now there's limited cap space available this summer. The Wolves clearly want to keep him. But given his rare skill set, do you think he could potentially be a top priority for any other teams?
So I don't know his market elsewhere, but I think it's definitely fair to kind of revisit, and question how that, partnership looks right now. Because before this series, I remember about a month ago or so trying to get some clarity from the Wolves as to their updated view on somebody like Kevin Durant, who they had, made a run at the February trade deadline. And as of that point, the messaging was that, yes, we had very real interest back then, but now Naz is the priority. And it's kind of like, like that's the girl I'm going to dance with, and I'm not going to worry about anything else. But then it's hard not to watch this series and see how little impact he had at times. I mean, the type of money you're talking when it's, somebody who I know stylistically this was just a really tough series for him, but when you have 6-point outings and just total no-shows, it does make me wonder, how they see it. Cause they've got, with Julius and Rudy and Nas, a whole lot of money going to a whole bunch of bigs. I'm curious to see what happens, but in a vacuum where I guess independent of all that, Nas's body of work is certainly going to be reflected in the market somewhere. I mean, he's a fantastic player that should get the type of offers that are going to make Minnesota's cap sheet look even messier.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about Nickeil Alexander-Walker on that front as well, with him being a free agent?
No, other than, just, a big time raise coming, and a guy that's been on one of the best contracts in the league for a minute.
Yeah.
When he's not trying to guard his cousin, he's pretty good. I'm fascinated by that assignment. It had to be so, they're like brothers, and it's like, it had to be so tricky to try to, to fight that off. No, other than, that he is somebody who fits in very well with today's NBA.
Yeah.
And I think that phone is going to be ringing. Admittedly, I'm a little early on the free agency front. So I don't know, what the suitors list might look like, but there's certainly going to be a healthy one.
Yeah. So in the last 5 years, only 2 teams have gone to the finals more than once, the Heat and the Celtics. And we are guaranteed to have our 7th consecutive unique champion this season. Do you think the parity that we're seeing in the league is changing the way that teams approach their team building process at all?
Yeah, it has to, because, we're obviously, the irony is, I'm going to say we're getting away from the super team approach, except OKC is the outlier. Like, they have a super team, like this trio. And again, you got guys on rookie contracts with J-Dub and Chet. And so it can only last so long, but like getting away from the heliocentric approach, which is ironic because we still have the Lukas of the world that are global superstars and who might be able to get back to, the conference final stage. But the second apron realities are such that, it is, I think, the age of semi-affordable players with, with a less elite transcendent skill set. I agreed the other day with Austin Rivers had a whole bit on this where he was like, it's not about having a Kyrie Irving handle. If you can, perfect the straight line drive, play on both ends of the floor, hit open shots, you can play in today's NBA. And those are the guys that are going to fill up 90% of the rosters. And then you got that upper crust of 10%. But it's an interesting philosophical discussion about Shea obviously has the ball in his hands a lot. And so I guess he pushes back on this a bit, but, it's just, we had that era of Harden and, not Steph, cause everything with him so much is off the ball, but, just guys. Joker obviously has the ball a ton. Feels like we're changing a bit there. And that's a basketball thing, but it's also a business thing where, more guys making 15 to 20 million as opposed to, can we get 3 $60 million guys?
So 3 teams left in the playoffs. For the other 27 fan bases in the league, the conversation is already focused on the upcoming draft and offseason, which this week, Shams Charania has said could be the, quote, craziest ever. Sam, in your conversations with people around the league, have you also gotten the impression that this could be a summer of major upheaval in the league?
For sure. I love the dramatic, I have Shams in my head now going major upheaval. The Giannis thing, this will be interesting to see if this ages well or not. Cause, we're tracking it fairly closely. Like, I'll be honest with you, yes, I can see craziness, but I keep saying this, we can't skip over the fact that he still hasn't raised his hand and said that he actually wants to leave Milwaukee. Yeah. And since the end of their season, I will say, and I personally, I have moved slightly closer to Milwaukee having a puncher's chance of convincing him to stay here since the end of the year, because when they lost, you looked at it and it was just, and I know the situation really well. It's like, come on, 3 straight first round bow outs. The only avenue they had to try to pivot again was to trade Dame this summer. And I thought that was going to be a conversation, because, that's already where things were heading. But then his injury means you lose that ability to pivot.
Yeah.
And there's all these factors where I just didn't understand, like, how in the world could the Bucks look Giannis dead in the face and act like he had any promising future there? But since that happened, the end of their season, Boston sees Jason Tatum go down. So Boston gets significantly weaker. We know their cap situation and the fact that, this summer, whether it's Derek White, somebody else, like, they're likely going to have to move somebody. So the Celtics are down. The Cavs, who look so dominant, get bounced. The Pacers are obviously fantastic, but that's the funny one to me, because the Bucks have such an edge with the Pacers. Like, I think they have a delusional confidence against Indiana. I don't even think I think Giannis doesn't care what Indiana, how good they look, because he thinks they can beat them no matter what. So I could see the Bucks telling him, are you sure you want to either go to the West, which is even more loaded, or, like, if we do a trade with somebody in the East, or both conferences, it's one of those things like the Carmelo Anthony situation back in the day with Denver, where, you go to the Knicks and the roster is depleted and you're really not in a better situation than the one that you work so hard to get out of. That's going to be the thing for Giannis. Is I think every conversation that the Bucks have with other teams about what a trade might look like is probably going to result in him, looking at his potential new team and not being more excited or at least any less concerned than he is about the Milwaukee situation. So that's my 2 cents on Giannis. From there, of course, Durant and others, we'll see what happens. But we obviously have moved very, very far away from the days of, July 1 free agency. I mean, the extensions are up so much that everything is movement now, and business is being done differently.
Yeah. Talked about Boston. Everyone assumes that we'll see them make a move to lower their tax bill as they head into a transition season with Jason Tatum out. So as of now, do you think there's any chance Boston could trade one of their more highly valued players like Derek White or Jaylen Brown? Or do you think it'll be a priority to keep those players and move off guys like Porzingis and Drew Holiday instead?
Well, I mean, Drew would be the natural pick. Derek would surprise me, but then again, Derek is the one, the Celtics have a bold front office, with Brad Stevens and Mike Zarin's been there forever. They've made bold moves before. And I think if you test the market for Drew, Porzingis with his health stuff and the way he played, I don't think it's going to be robust for him either. But if Derek is the one who, can replenish your roster in the kind of way that can keep you close to the level you were at before, then I could see them doing that. I saw speculation the other day about the Warriors trying to pull something off, for Derek White. I mean, that would be incredible for them. But then, I don't know, maybe a Kuminga's coming back. I mean, again, our Anthony Slater wrote the other day about how tricky and challenging any Kuminga sign and trade is going to be. So, I don't know which of those guys it'll be, but it is. I don't know how you guys feel. I'm a little torn on this because, the parody is fun, but the second apron realities and the runways of these really good teams getting shortened to the degree they are, admittedly has me a little bit bummed out because I like seeing Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown push through all those years of conference finals losses, finally get the championship. And now, just because of the way the CBA is structured, they're going to have to break it up. Cleveland, again, we thought they were set up for the long term, but they have tough questions coming right away. So like the parody is fun in the moment, but then you look up and it's like I wonder how we're going to feel about the churn when it's every 3, 4, 5 years, these teams are just kind of disappearing.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky because I think there just has to be so much intentionality behind what teams are doing. And you can't just like make moves willy-nilly anymore. I mean, look, like right. Phoenix, I feel like is probably the poster child of that, where it's like you can't just make these moves to get the talent in because eventually like it's just untenable. It just can't happen. So the intentionality and like the biggest advantage right now probably in the NBA is like good ownership, good GM, like you just have to have both those things at this point, and they have to know the CBA very well. But yeah, it is very tricky for sure.
I almost wonder if the Wolves team building process over these last couple of years will look like more teams will look like that. I mean, that Cat trade was such a huge trade, but I'm anticipating that we're going to just see more trades like that, where teams are trading a big money player to break it up into smaller contracts and figure it out as they go. And credit to Tim Connolly, because that was such a huge risky trade. And for them to make back-to-back conference finals, I mean, I feel like it paid off. But that trade kind of felt like an outlier last summer. And now looking ahead to this summer, it feels like that we might see more trades like that.
No, I completely agree, Alex. I mean, even right after the Wolves lost, you walk it through the hallway at Paycom Center, and admittedly, it's a little awkward because that group in particular, I really enjoy their front office and their coaching staff. And from a media standpoint, they're very inclusive in terms of like, you get to spend real time with them. And so the last couple of weeks I was around them a lot and enjoyed the heck out of, Tim, their whole group, Matt Lloyd and Tim's brother, Joe, and all these guys. And then you see them after and you're kind of trying to give it the old, hey, great season, but you could kind of tell right away, to your point, that none of them were going to say we didn't think we would be here, but they were like, listen, if you would have asked us how we felt, well, we made that trade, and then told us that we were in the West Finals, like pretty damn good, and you mentioned it earlier, 2 conference finals after, the run of struggle that they had in Minnesota all those years. Like this is a legendary time for the team in that market. And yeah, to do it on the heels of a trade that was largely financially driven is impressive. And I'm with you. I think it is going to become more the norm.
So you mentioned Cleveland. How real do you think the possibility is that Cleveland could break up that core 4 and trade one of Darius Garland or Jared Allen this summer?
I mean, the Garland one, every time you fall short, the questions that were there before are going to come back. So meaning last summer, Donovan Mitchell goes into the summer and, our group had reported right when their season ended that Darius Garland was going to likely ask for a trade. And that didn't end up happening, but it did require that Darius had to have some very real conversations with Kenny Atkinson, with Kobe Altman about his role. So you had Darius wanting a bigger role. He didn't want to just be in the corner. And it was a storybook, season from there. They ironed that out. They were fantastic. But the other part of the question with that backcourt that was there then and is there again now is just the defensive size. And, I think the idea of, do they need to try something new? So all those different parts of the dynamic and the relationship are still there. And I wonder if they get revisited, because it's a tough pill to swallow to be that good in the regular season and then flame out like they did. So, I mean, yeah, I could see them, pivoting, because you have to keep evolving. I mean, when they look up and they're, for all intents and purposes, finishing 7th or 8th, in the league, that's not where they were trying to be. So yeah, I could see something happening there.
So with Tatum's injury and all the uncertainty around the Bucks, the East is suddenly looking like it could be extremely weak next season. Are there any East teams that you think are well positioned to make a big move this summer to gain an advantage and take advantage of this opportunity?
Well, I mean, it's wild. If you would have told me, guys, that when I wrote a story about the Pacers right around the time when they were 10 and 15.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because they came through Sacramento, and I'm just going to be real. Like, I was just trying to, like, I didn't have a lot to write that week. And I was like, all right, what can I do on the Pacers? Let me talk to Tyrese, talk to Rick Carlisle. And, but it was like my energy towards this story was that this is the fluky conference finals participant coming back down to earth.
Yeah.
And what I learned that night that I keep repeating because I think they deserve a lot of credit for this is that even at 10 and 15, I had asked Carlisle when they were in Sacramento, I said, essentially, the only downside of making a conference finals appearance is that expectations go up. How do you feel like your group is handling, the framing of their situation now? And he didn't run from it at all and literally just said, we are trying to win a championship. That is what we are trying to build. And I actually walked away going, okay, there's a legitimacy to this program culturally that is more substantive than I had realized. So to see it go from 10 to 15 to what they are now, my first thought to your question, Andrew, is it's the Pacers. And it's not necessarily a move that, can elevate them, although I'm sure depending on how this finish goes, there's stuff that they'll look at. But they're in a pretty good spot. And, they got to figure out the Miles Turner free agency stuff. But, he's widely expected to stick around. But, they're well positioned. Detroit, with all the momentum of their program, what can they do? I don't see a team that is one move away. I mean, you go down the list, Philly, of course, it's just a massive if of health.
What about Orlando?
Sure.
Like they need a guard pretty badly.
It's, to me though, it's hard. I feel like they're a little bit on the knife's edge of their own identity, meaning I feel like a lot of the moves that they might consider might actually take away from their superpower, which is that incredible defense.
Yeah, true.
Like when you hear Trae Young attached to them, like I don't like that. Like I'd see, and I get it because they need shooting and they need offense. But if I was them, I would be tempted to be patient because I do think, especially nationally, because we don't ever talk about Orlando, we have completely glossed over how significant their injuries were last season.
Yeah,
I mean, they were
definitely
massive.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would be tempted to see what the development looks like because Paolo is special and, can he be a little more special next year? And the rest of those guys getting better as well. Not to say they don't make any move, but they have such a unique attack defensively that especially in this era where all of a sudden that's what we're doing, OKC is showing. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, I do expect them to kind of get back into that top tier.
Yeah. Hopefully everybody takes care of their obliques this summer.
Yes. So many oblique issues.
That was the weirdest thing. Like, I don't even remember hearing about oblique injuries until those two with their two stars was just so strange. Let's talk about KD. He's one of the big names that's expected to be moved this summer. Mark Stein had reported a couple teams in Houston and Philly who are interested in KD. That the interest may be overstated. The two teams that are reportedly do have interest are San Antonio and Miami. Do you think the Spurs and Heat are like definite front runners for KD? Are there any other teams that you see having interest in KD?
I think about the Knicks. Again, let's just assume that they fall in this series. But it's basically to me, it's Giannis and then it's Kevin. So all the teams we're going to talk about, I think first have to figure out what's going on with Giannis because Giannis in San Antonio could be a very real thing. The Rockets certainly would. That Giannis is somebody that they would think about cutting into their core for. So from there, it's just a matter of, all right, is he available? If not, then the Durant market gets spiked and a lot of these teams are going to be in play. Miami is one where I don't know how good they would be with Kevin, but they're always going to be in the conversation. They obviously are reeling in the wake of the Jimmy Butler trade. and how bad they were after he was gone. Houston's candidacy for Durant has always been a tricky thing to discuss and report on because, their front office has been very direct and clear about the fact that it's, they think incredibly highly of Kevin, but his age is just simply not on their timeline.
Yeah.
But I think the reason that it still gets talked about is because, people wonder if Ime Udoka has different ideas about the urgency of now. And also, anytime you have Royal Ivy as an assistant coach on your staff, who is, a very close friend of Kevin's and that's a connection that always gets made. But, the Rockets, I don't think are going to be chasing Kevin. So, but we'll see. I mean, he's still, he had a good year, obviously trailed off in the second half, but he's still putting up elite numbers and could be a guy who could help somebody. But of all those teams, whether it's Durant or somebody else, I'm really curious to see how the Knicks respond to coming this close if they do, in fact, fall off here.
So our last question for you is about the draft, which is less than a month away. Are there any teams that you're expecting to be aggressive when it comes to the draft? So either moving up or down or looking to trade out of the draft altogether?
Alex, admittedly, now I'm making editing work for you guys. Because of the greatness of Sam Vecini, I'm terrible on the draft. Like I don't have much. I'm just being honest with you. So I don't have a good sense of that now, other than, I guess, to close the loop on our first question, I just will be sitting back like I will be for the next 7 years or so, just trying to enjoy, the dozens of players that the Oklahoma City Thunder draft. I mean, that's where my focus is. And because of the forthcoming NBA finals on my flight home the other day, I actually, and Andrew, you'll be proud of me because you're the expert on this. Man, I did a deep dive on all right, I need to go back and make sure I specifically understand how many picks they have, where they got them, which ones turned into this guy, which ones turned into that guy, how many more they have coming. And, it's just remarkable. So, the fact that, what do they have, 15 and 28, I think, in this draft, they've got nothing sexy. I mean, it's not, it's not lottery.
Yeah. 15 and 24. Yeah.
24. Yeah. So, that's kind of my focus. Other than that, it's, it sounds like, Dallas certainly is going to take Cooper, and San Antonio appears to be preparing to hold on to number 2. From, the Philly situation is interesting. So, but I don't have a great sense of which teams are going to be the most aggressive.
Yeah. My guess is like Philly's just going to take somebody here, but like they're in such a weird situation, like I don't know exactly where you go from here if you're Daryl Morey, because you could say like a lot of different ways. I mean, I would recommend, hey, why don't you just take a young guy and then look to move off some of your older guys and just like start the rebuild now. Like you've been gifted with the 3rd pick. You have a young Tyrese Maxey. You have a way to kind of shift this. Yeah. And I don't, it doesn't seem like that's the direction they're heading, but they're going to have to make a decision sometime soon.
I say this, respectfully, because he's a hell of a player who just dealt with health stuff last year. But, and I'm being somewhat of a smartass, if you will, but like it is the season of moving away from Paul George appears to work for a lot of different organizations. You know what I mean? Like the Clippers decision to not, re-up him, they end up having a good year. Obviously they look like they might be a conference finals or finals participant, but there was that subplot. You have the backstory with OKC and the fact that Paul George trade is the foundation of this juggernaut team. You've got the Indiana backstory. It's something I thought about the other day. Like there's all these wild 6 degrees of Paul George components to this postseason. So all of which is to say that, I don't know, maybe the Sixers should go with the trend and see what happens. And like you said, go get a good young player and start going in that direction.
Well, Sam, thank you for answering all of our questions. It is now time to play Andrew versus the Beat, our weekly trivia show where Andrew goes head-to-head against an NBA beat writer. This week, we got Sam Amick. Now, Sam, you've played this before. I've come up with 8 questions all about the playoffs, mostly about conference finals. You're going to give me a number between 1 and 8. It'll correspond to a question. If you get it right, you'll get at least 2 points. If you get it wrong, Andrew will have a chance to steal for 1, and we'll go back and forth until all the questions have been asked and answered. So, Sam, what number would you like to start with?
7.
Question number 7. This past week, Jalen Brunson became the Knicks franchise leader for most 30-point games in the playoffs. How many 30-point playoff games has Brunson had as a Knick? Now, before you answer, you can make Andrew answer first, and then you can go higher or lower, or you can answer first, and then make Andrew go higher or lower. If Andrew gets it exactly correct, though, or you would get a bonus point, so something to think about.
So we're simply talking 30-point games.
30-point games, Brunson as a Knick.
Stuff. Okay. All time, not these playoffs.
Correct.
30-point games. I'm going to go with 27.
All right, Andrew, the bar has been set at 27. Would you like to go over or under?
That's probably too high.
Oh, Sam, would you like to change your choice?
Nope. We're good. We're good.
I'll say lower.
Well, that was great. A great hint from Sam, letting you know you should go lower.
15, 14.
It was 21, though. I mean, you weren't that
21.
far off. Yeah, 21. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, Andrew, board is yours. And I actually accidentally just gave Sam a point. Sam just got a free point.
Yes, let's go, Alex.
I can't remove it, too. It's permanent. It's permanent Sharpie.
No.
I'm sorry.
I'll go number 1.
All right, question number 1. Among active players, it's not surprising that LeBron James has played the most conference finals games. Which active player has played in the second most conference finals games?
Ooh, second most conference finals games.
So you got Bron number 1. Who is number 2?
Wow. Let's see. Is it Al Horford?
Andrew, that is incorrect. Sam, you have a chance to steal for 1 point that I've already given you.
I need to earn my point.
I've already given you.
The pressure to at least get 1 so that your scorecard is not incorrect at the end is immense. So I'm going to go with a Warrior, but my question is, I'm trying to think about how many games in the conference finals Draymond missed versus Steph.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just going to go with you hear LeBron's name, you think about Steph in that same sentence. So I will say Steph.
A good guess, but actually Andrew was on the right track. It is a Boston Celtic. It is Jaylen Brown.
Oh,
it's Jaylen Brown.
It is Jaylen Brown.
Whoa.
2 more than Kevin Durant.
Seriously.
Do we have the list from there, Alex? I'm curious.
I can bring it up while we're talking. So Sam,
wild.
You have the board next.
And I still don't have my point.
It's got a ghost point.
Number 3, please.
All right. Question number 3. Only 2 players in NBA history have scored 50-plus points in a conference finals game. One game was against the Knicks, and the other was against the Suns. Can you name the 2 players who have scored 50-plus points in a conference finals game? You do get 1 point per correct answer, and this is all time.
I'm going to make Andrew answer this one. Is that an option here?
No, it's not.
Damn it. I was trying to get
It was an interesting strategy, though.
No?
It's a throw it back to you, Andrew. Oh, my memory's failing me, man. The Knicks against the Knicks and the Suns.
Wow.
Is the wow that I should be remembering this, Andrew?
No.
Yeah,
It's just me trying to think.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the list for conference finals games. LeBron, Jaylen Brown, Kevin Durant, actually only behind by 1. Al Horford, behind by 3. And then Steph Curry, Clay, Draymond.
Wow.
Ooh, they were way down.
There you go. George Hill. Why is he still considered active player on StatHead? He is number 10 on this list.
Point.
He was.
I just saw him chugging a beer at a Pacers game and hanging out with Pat McAfee. I don't know. I got LeBron. We got a 50 burger in the conference finals. MJ.
That is correct, Sam, for 1 point.
Yeah, baby.
Who would you like for your second guess?
The MJ was correct. Correct?
Yes. So the other one would have been against the Suns. That helps you at all.
MJ against the Knicks. Who dropped 50 on the Suns? We're going all time. I'm just going to throw a Wilt in there. It had to have happened at some point.
Always a good guess with Wilt. And it may be true because I can't remember how they do what they used to call. They used to call them like the division finals or something.
Sure.
But for the purposes of this, it is incorrect. Andrew, you have any guesses?
I think this was Dirk that dropped 50 against Phoenix.
Wow, very strong guess, Andrew, and that is correct. It was Dirk.
Nice job.
All right. Okay, Andrew, you have control of the board.
I'll go number 2.
Question number 2. The Knicks won Game 5 and will now head back to Indy for Game 6. In NBA history, only 3 franchises have come back from a 3-1 deficit in the conference finals. How many can you name? You don't have to give me the year. You just have to give me the name of the franchise. There's 3 of them. You get 1 point for a correct answer.
Golden State.
Yeah, when did that happen, Andrew?
2016.
That is correct. Can you get either of the other 2?
So horrific time. Let's see. Down 3-1.
Alex, can you repeat the question since I was distracted?
So it's the 3 franchises that have come back from 3-1 down in the conference finals specifically.
I honestly don't know the others. I'll say the Lakers just because they've been there so much.
That is incorrect, Andrew.
Okay.
Sam, you have a chance to steal. You can get 2 points here. You can just guess some franchises, and you might be right.
Well, I mean, the Clippers was not. That was second round, first and second, right, in the bubble.
You asking for me to confirm that?
Sorry, no. I just 3-1. I've got the Joker bubble Nuggets in my head, but they fell short.
Bubble Nuggets.
Finals.
Bubble
That
Nuggets.
sounds inappropriate. It was not the Bubble Nuggets. They lost to the Lakers in the conference finals. Yeah, I'm just going to go with franchises that have been there a lot. So Celtics.
Guess what, Sam? That is correct. Great guess.
Man, I went the wrong coast.
1981 Boston Celtics.
81.
Now, there's one other that you could guess. Will you get it? We'll see.
The Sixers.
Did you say someone?
Sixers.
No, it was unfortunately the Washington Bullets. 1979.
Wow. There's no way I would ever get that.
Okay, Sam, you have control of the board. You're only down by 1. 4 questions remaining.
Go number 5.
Question number 5. There have been 8 5-man lineups in this year's playoffs that have played at least 100 minutes together. Which team has had the best 5-man lineup in this year's playoffs with a net rating of plus 17 when they are on the court?
This is the OKC platform. Let's go for OKC.
That is incorrect. Andrew, who would you like to guess?
I think this might be the Wolves.
Damn. Okay, I didn't think you'd get that. That is correct. It's the Wolves. The Wolves starting lineup was a plus 17.
The lack of confidence.
I really think I'd trick you on that one.
No, I mean,
Andrew, would you have picked OKC if I didn't pick OKC?
No, I would not have, because the Thunder's best lineups are like their like Caruso, Case and Wallace, like small ball lineups, and they just don't play them for like long stretches, like these like little tiny like death by 1,000 cuts type thing.
Yeah, Denver is second
listened
to. Okay, they're like plus 14. Okay, Andrew, board is yours.
Number 4.
Question number 4. 4 of Indy's starters scored fewer than 10 points in their Game 5 loss to the Knicks. Which player has had the most games with fewer than 10 points in this year's playoffs?
Wait, of anybody?
Of
Pacers
anybody?
Player?
No, just anybody. Any team. The player in this year's playoffs who's had the most played games while scoring fewer than 10 points. So it has to be someone who plays a lot, but also doesn't score a lot.
Yeah, this is a goofy question.
Thank you.
Let me think. Who does not score? So single digits, most games played. Is this like Mitchell Robinson or Deuce McBride? I don't know.
Well, that was 2 names. You can only give one answer.
I was going to say, we have a cheater in our midst.
I know. I'll say Mitchell Robinson.
Andrew, that is correct. It was Mitchell Robinson. Very nice. Sam, 2 questions left. Would you like 6 or 8?
Well, I'm curious if you have a list. Was Rudy Gobert on the short list?
So Case and Wallace was number 2. I remember that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I don't remember where Rudy was, though.
We can keep it moving.
Would you like question 6 or 8?
8, please.
The last time OKC made the finals was 2012, where they lost to the Heat in 5 games. We're going to name the other 14 teams that made the playoffs that season. So how this works is Sam will give me a name, then Andrew will give me a name, and we'll go back and forth until one of you stumbles. So you just got to give me the name of a team that made the playoffs in 2012. Cannot be the Thunder or the Heat. Pretty straightforward.
Dallas
did make the playoffs. OKC beat them.
Wow.
Andrew.
San Antonio.
That is correct. OKC beat them. Back to Sam. Indiana. That is correct. Indiana was in the playoffs that year. Andrew.
Boston
was in the playoffs that year. Sam.
When did the Lakers fall off?
2012. That was not an answer to your question.
In 2012.
Title in 2010. I'll say Lakers.
That is correct. The 3rd team that OKC beat in that playoff run.
Yeah.
All right, Andrew.
What about Chicago?
Yes, Chicago was in the playoffs. Was that the when Rose tore his ACL?
I think Rose. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Rose got hurt that year.
That was that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That might have been a hint for Sam. Sam, back to you.
True.
My mind went to the other side.
Houston Rockets did not make the playoffs in 2012. Of course, that was the year before, a few months before they got James Harden.
That's right.
That's right.
Kevin Martin, Luis Scola Rockets.
The Jeremy Lamb Rockets.
The Jeremy Lamb Rockets.
I think he barely played for them, but
as we all remember them.
Yes. Okay. Final question. Andrew, you get first dibs. Which player has had the most turnovers in this year's playoffs so far?
The most turnovers.
Most turnovers?
Like total turnovers?
As opposed to what?
I'm just asking.
Yes, total
per game
turnovers. No, I would have said per game. I said most turnovers.
I'm just asking.
Total
just
turnovers.
Asking. I would guess, based on his turnover totals against OKC, which were very, very high, this is Nikola Jokic.
Damn, Andrew, that is correct. Wow. Good job, Andrew. You won the week. Andrew versus the Beat. I thought I'd get you with that one, too. I thought you would guess Randall or someone.
I was locked in those series. I was locked in.
I know you were. And yeah, it was because he played 14 games. So it's not like he played that many fewer games than the Wolves players.
Yeah.
So congrats, Andrew.
Thank you.
Congrats, Andrew. That was
Andrew. Alex feels so reluctant to congratulate me in that.
Thought he stumped you.
Right. Please go read Sam Amick at The Athletic. Sam, anything in particular you'd like to plug today?
No, my friend. I'm plugging 3 or 4 days at home before these finals. Thank you to Sam Presti and their crew for making quick work of the Wolves.
Who is rooting harder for the Thunder that night? Thunder fans or your family?
Yeah. As you know, you watched me go through it. I had some things happening back on the home front.
Yeah.
The first quarter of the game, and I don't mind sharing. So my oldest son, and thankfully everybody's okay, but he got in a car wreck. So first quarter, and I'm getting a phone call about a car accident. And the only saving grace was I look up and the Thunder, ahead by 90 points. It didn't matter. So I'm in the back on the phone. So yeah, you go back and read my column from that night and just know that I didn't actually watch any of the first half.
You came and sat down and I was like, summary, Thunder good, Timberwolves very bad, I think is what I told you.
But it is, listen, first world problems. I'm excited to cover the finals. Every year I get reminded that as much as I enjoy this time of year, the travel it's heavy. And so getting home for a few days is nice. But before you know it, it'll be back in Bricktown and see what they can do. But like always, we will have all kinds of coverage coming at you. But appreciate you guys doing this. This was fun.
Yeah. Thank you to Sam for coming on the show. If you will, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the show. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend and the basketball. And we'll talk to you guys again next week.